So, for you guys who don't know, Bart is in New Zealand. He is got his expertise is in sports physiology and human physiology. Bart, tell us a little bit more about your background, just for people that don't know, because I don't know that I don't want to mess up and tell you the full.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So I did. I eventually ended up with three advanced research degrees. Two of them are exercise physiology based, and one of them is cardiovascular pathophysiology. And so that's what I spent sort of 17 years teaching in various different universities around down here in Australia and New Zealand, and also up there in the UK. And did some research work and published a few articles and things. That the pretty typical story for your usual go-getter academic. And eventually just completely burned out, basically because of the bullying really in that industry, and the fact that they're always looking to employ people who are cutting edge, who want to think a bit differently, until they find someone who's a bit cutting edge and wants to think a bit differently, and then they don't want that anymore. Oh, no, we just want you to say what it says here in the book, is what they tell us. And I'm like, well, what did you employ me for? You asked me, why is it that I'm different from what you'll get from a book? And I told you, and you said, yeah, have a job. And then they turn around and say, great, now tell us what it says in the book. So that's kind of my experience with academia. So I got out of that a couple of years ago, and have since been building a YouTube empire, as it were. And that's pretty much me, really. So physiology of exercise specifically, cardiovascular issues, human nutrition. But the main focus of my channel is around the actual science, or lack of science, in human nutrition. My barrow, if you like, my cart that I set out is undermining this huge body of absolutely top level research that that other crowd tells us that they've got to support their diet. So basically, when they want to flash these papers up on the screen, what I do is play Where's Waldo with those papers. There's your problem. There's your problem. There's your problem. That's why that one's no good. What's your next one? So that's my shtick. Yeah.
Let me, because we're going to give people a chance to ask questions and stuff, but I wanted to just sort of get your impression, because a lot of, how to interpret the literature, what we can say, nutrition science, I've sort of made the argument that it's not particularly good, particularly when it comes to predicting the future, i.e. how long are you going to live, heart disease, if you're going to get that or not. Can you talk a little bit about how the state of nutrition science in general?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a lot of this is colored by my particular training in science. I had a professor that was absolutely a stickler for all the details and all the disciplines, and was not one to allow the slightest compromise of any of those disciplines, any of those rules. That being said, I've got an autism spectrum presentation, which means that I can relate to that kind of thing very easily. So I have a very, very clear focus on what those disciplines in science are and what they're not. And there are a lot of people around who are trying to say, look, there's a lot of gray here. Yet we have a lot of scientific evidence to support this, that, or the other thing. And what I'm saying is, well, scientific evidence is not gray. It's black and white. If what you're holding has shades of gray in it, then there are reasons to cast aspersions and to say this is not great. So the current state of nutritional science is this. When we define science as it should be, which is an empirical, experimental, interventional look at the effect of modifying one and only one variable on an outcome variable, everything else controlled properly. If that's what you've got some science. If you've got for example, epidemiology, I can't even say it properly anymore because I've said it wrong so many times on purpose, then you don't have black and white. What you have is a very, very large sample of grey, which doesn't actually answer the question it purports to. And often the conclusions to these studies written by the authors of those studies are written with their next funding in mind. They are alarmist. They do need to worry us. They do need us to give them lots more money for their next study. And so they need to paint the story like there's something shocking going on here. And they do that by using smoke and mirrors, like instead of using an absolute outcome statistic, they'll use a relative one. I did a video last week about a very new piece of epidemiology that was published last week, and it showed that there was a 150% risk of breast cancer in the 90th percentile of milk consumption in women versus the 10th percentile. Thus, they were saying, look, if you drink milk, you're 150% the risk of getting breast cancer over a 10-year follow-up period. So I went through and did the maths and showed people, what exactly it was that the study really did find in terms of absolute outcome statistics. And we found out that the incidence difference between breast cancer in those two populations was in the tenths of thousandths per woman per year. So how close to zero do you need it before you're going to say that's zero?
Yeah. Let me ask you, Bart, you've talked about gluconeogenesis. We've heard that it's demand driven, it's supply driven. You're saying it's both.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah. It's demand driven when that's physiologically appropriate. In other words, there's a need. And it's supply driven when there's an overplus of caloric intake. So if your effective total caloric intake is at a level which is appropriate for your actual expenditure, then you're not probably going to have that problem because everything's in balance. If you are exercising heavily but not consuming enough carb to subserve the repletion of your glycogen pools, then your body will create extra glycogen, in which case then it's demand driven. If you haven't done any exercise that day and you go and eat half a pizza, a plate of pasta and whatever else, then your body has to do something with that sugar. So what is it going to, you're going to go into fat storage, that kind of thing. So that's basically how it works. So there are a number of interactions along your metabolic pathways that turn things on and off. What I usually say to people is, look, for the vast majority of people, for the vast majority of time, gluconeogenesis is demand driven. Because most people eat too much sugar, really, in which case that will shut down gluconeogenesis. The only time you would make glucose in any significant amount via gluconeogenesis is if you're not eating a lot. So that's most people. We carnivores obviously are a bit different because we need to produce more sugar for ourselves, given that we eat very little of it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's, I guess if you're not doing any activity and you're overeating too much food, regardless, you might get in a situation where it becomes, supply driven, and then I guess some of that will go to refilling glycogen stores. So I would imagine.
Yep. But then, once your glycogen pools are replete in your body, and your body stores very, very little glycogen. Really, once you're full, then gluconeogenesis will stop because pooling glucose in your blood is toxic. So what's going to happen is you're going to flick into producing triglycerides, and you're going to go into fat storage mode if there's excess, basically.
So there's a question. She said she loves how you break down studies for us and bring the science in simple ways to your channel. She first started watching you because you spoke about your personal experience with fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
She's curious if you still are managing the symptoms of fibromyalgia with a carnivore diet.
Yep. The only time I now have fibromyalgia symptoms at all is in the 48 hours following any kind of transgression. So if I eat something I should not, which happens occasionally, the next 48 hours I know all about it. For those that haven't seen that video, haven't seen that story, I developed fibromyalgia at about 38, 39 years of age. I had it for about 5 years, and it got to a point where there were days that I couldn't remotely consider getting out of bed that day. I was just completely plastic, completely unable to move a lot of my joints at all. Almost like a form of paralysis. It was horrible. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And it was the carnivore, the transition to carnivore, that actually cleared that fibromyalgia away. And that was the thing that absolutely convinced me that I needed to stay this course and see what would happen. And of course, fibromyalgia gone, anxiety disorder. At one point, I couldn't leave the house for a year. That's gone. I mean, running a YouTube channel, being in the public eye, being, subject to criticism. Now, I know there's nobody out there that's remotely criticizing anything I've ever said on my channel or saying anything negative about me at all. So I'm aware of that, but it could have happened, couldn't it? So that's gone. What else has happened? Bipolar tendency, bipolar disorder, gone pretty much. I mean, yeah, it's like all of these things are just lifted and disappeared. Every possible digestive disorder you could think about, I've had. Pancreatitis, I've had diverticulitis, I'm completely gluten intolerant, the works. And it's all of it cleared up simply by removing plants from my diet to, what I'm calling 95%. Because I've worked out over the last 2 years that my rate of transgression is about 5 days in 100.
Okay.
So,
what I guess I'm trying to think what else has been. Have you changed much since you started the diet as far as considerations on what you do?
in terms of what? Sorry, Sean.
Just change anything in particular? What are your thoughts on electrolytes, Bart? How do you?
Yeah, I don't chase them so much. Like I'm not a big devotee of the snake juice or anything like that. I will add salt to just about every meal, to be fair. And we have 2 options in the house. We have a pink Himalayan and we have a black Himalayan. The black one has got sulfur in it, which is quite nice for a steak now and then or something like that. And it means you just get out, that different mix of the different electrolytes and things. The only other time that I would go with the snake juice or anything like that is if I'm coming off a fast or something like that, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't cause myself any problems that way. It seems to be something that I seem to regulate fairly well by myself, just by adding it to my to every meal. So that seems to be fine for me. I mean, others need obviously to chase the snake juice and have some of this and some of that, and I guess it's whatever works for the individual, isn't it?
What do you just mentioned coming off a fast? What is your thought? I guess you obviously are a sort of proponent of fasting. In what context are you using fasting? Because you're not overweight. Where are you? Why are you doing that currently?
Well, according to Jury and Ryder, I am overweight, Sean.
Oh, well, sorry.
Also, according to him, I'm also on the juice, in which case I want my money back, frankly, because it's not working. I'm 5'6" and 145 pounds dripping wet. So that's, that's not working if I'm on the juice. So let's, fasting for me is about inflammation. It's about resetting inflammation. It's about resetting the immune system. It usually follows a transgression, frankly. If I go, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have that piece of pizza, or, I'm going to drink that beer or whatever. Generally it'll be, a 2 or 3 day fast after that will clear those symptoms up. So that would be the usual one. The first time I actually did a fast, Sean, I did it because there are so many people on my channel who were into it and doing it and following guys like Cole and whatever else, that I wanted to have some exposure to it, some experience of it, so that I knew what I was talking about when I was talking to people about it. So I did a week-long fast. It was my longest one, I think it was, or 7 or 8 days or something like that, just so that I could say, yeah, I've done that. I've been there. I've experienced it. I know what that's about. And it was interesting, but it didn't change anything, probably because there wasn't a lot that needed changing at that time. I was more doing it to try it. Yeah.
Do you think that's appropriate for other individuals, like some? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I very much look at people on a case-by-case basis, and there are some people that. For the first thing, I should say very clearly is that when I'm talking to people in consultancy, I make it very clear that what I'm saying to these people is not to be taken as advice. What I say to people is, look, I'm a scientist. I'm a highly trained scientist. I understand science really well. If you want my opinion on what the science says, that's great. I can give you that. If you want me to say, if I was in your shoes, here's what I might do, I can do that, but I'm not saying you should. So I will look at someone on a case-by-case basis, get their history. It's usually an hour-long discussion. And then I would go, well, you know what? In your circumstances, given your presentation, there are some indications for fasting. You might want to look at some fasting pretty seriously. Here are some things to watch out for that you want to do and not do. Don't just go off and do fasting by yourself, like Cole says. Just go and do it. I don't agree with Cole on that. I think that's a little bit irresponsible and will probably end up biting him on the backside at some point, I would say. There'll be a problem at some point. And then I supervise those people pretty carefully while they are, I'm in touch with them. What's happening, how you're feeling, what's going on, that sort of thing. And for me, it's about the reset of the immune system. It's about the autophagy side of it, which I also understand. The other way of getting an autophagy is exercise. In fact, exercise is more effective than fasting at getting autophagy happening. So that is also another option for people. But I mean, it's a tool, I guess, that can be used. But I don't think just any old Tom, Dick or Harry off the street should be running around telling people to fast and advising people to fast. I'm against that. I think that's probably irresponsible.
Carl has commented he loves your podcast, but he worries you're going to have a stroke on camera when you get too worked up. He says,
right.
Be more stoic. So he's worried that you're going to burn out.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for that. Yeah, look, I really do appreciate that. I think what people need to understand is that when I'm doing the nutrition science watchdog thing on my channel over there, that is a role, people. That is a public presentation. That is a personality that I am putting forward, and I'm doing it in the way that I'm doing it because the way I do it seems to work. It garners clicks. It garners people that want to see what I've got to say, even if it's just to be offended by it. And that suits me at the moment. If that's an opportunity to get my message across, then I guess I'll take it. It would be great if I didn't have to play any sort of a role, if I could just be completely myself. But I mean, you look at any of these people that are that are running these channels, there are personalities everywhere, aren't there? There are people who are presenting themselves in all sorts of ways. So yeah, relax. You know, I'm really not as distressed as you seem to think I might be there at all. It's the role. Yeah.
All right. Somebody's commenting just because of the time zone change. We have quite as many people. I think people messed up the time zone. So we swung forward on daylight savings here. And do they do that in New Zealand, by the way?
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Okay.
at different dates, of course. So I have to keep an eye on what the stateside dates are, so that I'm in the right place at the right time.
I see.
Yeah.
And where were you at again? I can't remember. You're
I'm currently living in Nelson, Sean, which is basically the very top of the South Island. Not the bit where you go up around Farewell Spit, just slightly down. There's that bay. Nelson is basically at the foot of that bay there. Best place in New Zealand. Best weather. Best access to facilities, natural and otherwise. Beautiful part of the country.
Well, hopefully I get back down there in the near future. I know I've got a bunch of traveling coming up this year, but not yet down to Australia and New Zealand yet. So here's from Terry.
Awesome.
How important do you think it is to work to change government nutrition guidelines, or should we focus only on change from the ground up, I guess, in the grassroots movement?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess what we're doing with the YouTube side of things and the kind of stuff I'm doing there, it is grassroots, isn't it? It's dealing with people at large who are tuning into the channel, who probably 90-something% of people that watch my videos are devotees anyway. They are already on board. At a government level, that's a tough task to get to that. We each have our level of influence, I guess, and what the government is doing is really above my station. All I can do is contribute at the grassroots level with people, and continue to contribute in so much as I can these days in terms of the published research in the background as well. For example, you know, the last experimental piece I published was 2019 January, I think. So there's still research going on that's still filtering through. When I left actually working in academia several years prior to that, and there's still data that's going through that process. You know, some things take a long time to get through and get published. So, and then there are still one or two research collaborations that I can sort of call on as well, and that's really, for me, that's where it is. My focus now is working with the people face to face in consultancy sessions, and running the channel, which is really the advertising for that, if you like. And leave the government stuff up to others, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what we do is a lot of advertising, and it kind of drives other people's interests. Sarah's asking you about your thoughts on fat to protein ratio for someone who exercises mildly, and do women and men have different requirements?
Yeah. There are all sorts of people running around saying all sorts of things in terms of where it should be at. As someone who exercises regularly, you are going to need more protein than someone who doesn't, absolutely, because your turnover rate's going to be higher. I'm not one of these people that believes you should eat piles and piles of protein. I think most of your energy should come from fat. I usually start people at around, 66-33, or if you like 50-50 by weight, because that's the same thing. And then it's an N equals 1 over several months, adjusting that to suit the needs of the individual. There's no textbook you can go to that says this is how much protein you need. Well, there is, but it's a load of nonsense. It's a number that they've derived and plucked from somewhere and said, that'll do, we'll put that in the book. And that's what people will believe because it's in the book. But I guess what it boils down to is that everybody needs to work this stuff out for themselves, for their own physiology, for their own needs. It's a very individual thing. So working nominally off a 2000 calorie diet, that would leave you ideally with what 2/3 of 2000 is going to be, 1 point whatever it is, 1000 kcals. You just get a calculator, and you can trace this back and use any of those programs you like that do the nutritional accounting for you. These days, to be fair, I don't use any of those programs myself. I don't count calories. I don't count macros. I don't even think about it. I just have an idea of what meals contain roughly what, and we're creatures of habit and we tend to repeat meals often, so I kind of know what they are, and it's just not something I have to think about anymore. You will find your level through experimentation. There will be a sweet spot that you'll go, oh, that's where I feel best. And so when you find that, that's where to probably dial it and zero down to. Yeah.
Here's a question. It says, how long does it take to damage metabolism from calorie restriction or fasting? And what time frame can we be expected to see it start to normalize? So I guess it's assumption that there is damage. Or do you have any thoughts or belief on that?
Yeah, that would have been my first question. Well, what damage are we talking about? There are some damages. There are things that you can do that I would call damage from fasting. Mostly they would be people who fast for extended periods before you start getting into a point where you're going to do, any kind of damage. Your body is very, very adept at protecting itself. Your body is very adept at adapting to the situation you put it in. We evolved for 350,000 years as hunter, gatherer, scavengers. We ate when the opportunity was there. We hunted when the opportunity was there. We collected a few subsistence type things when there wasn't that opportunity, and our physiology will adapt and adjust to what it needs to be doing. We have genes that control all of that kind of stuff for us. They've been around for 3,800 million years. They know what they're doing. I think we can relax about it pretty much. What I say to people is, unless there's an indication, a clear indication for it, I would tend to limit fasting to 7 days at a crack, personally. Now, am I saying it's unsafe to fast for longer than a week? No, I'm just saying we know that fasting for a week is not causing people problems. We know that people that fast for a week are getting the results they want in terms of resetting their immune systems, inflammation issues, all those kind of things. So let's go with what works. And let's not push the envelope so much. I'm all about not subjecting people to risks that they don't need to subject themselves to. And so that's what I say personally. I just go, look, go for a week, and if that's not doing it, then we'll take a week off, we'll refeed for a week, and we'll go again, or 2 weeks and go again, depending on what the needs of the individual are. So I think for me, that covers that one off. And anyone that tells you to fast for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, unless you are severely morbidly obese, that's probably a very bad idea. And I can think of an example of the bloke I spoke to last year, Big John, who probably should just call himself John these days. He was 530 when he started, and he fasted for, I think it was 500 days from memory, no food at all, and lost 300 pounds or something. Okay, fine. That's not dangerous for him because obviously he's got some calories stored up there. And obviously the body will use stored fat before it will use protein. So this whole idea that fasting will cause your muscles to break down, no, not until you've got no fat left, obviously. You know, why would your body break down its own structures when there's stored fat available? Well, of course it wouldn't. So there you go. Yeah, so a week for me would be what I would say. And again, it's not advice that I get. I just say to people, look, if I was you, I might fast for a week here, maybe.
Talk about, nobody's asked a question, but I know you've talked about this in the past, and just talk about cardiovascular disease and the thought that, what are your thoughts on the causal nature of LDL in general, or if it's modified LDL? What are the causal factors in cardiovascular disease that we need to
Yeah. Okay. So for me, at the absolute root of the tree is chronic systemic inflammation. No inflammation, no atherosclerosis. It's that simple. So inflammation is an absolutely required fundamental keystone of cardiovascular disease. Once you've got inflammation, then your body will react in such a way as to cause the atherosclerosis situation to develop, which brings up the question, okay, well, what is it that's causing inflammation? What is the inflammation about? A lot of it is around modified LDL. So a lot of people say LDL is causally associated with heart disease. No, it isn't. Not in its native natural state as synthesized by your body. It's only when that LDL becomes either glycated or oxidized or both that your body then goes, hang on, that's not the LDL that I made. That's not me. That's an invading protein potentially. That's potentially a pathogen. I need to become inflamed and react in such a way as to protect myself from this LDL that's become modified. And so now I need to lock it down. I need to stop it from moving around the body. I need to cause this fatty streak to occur. Macrophages will get in here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So no modification of LDL, no inflammation, no heart disease at any level of circulating LDL. And the other thing that people talk about, they talk about cholesterol, this cholesterol, that cholesterol, the other thing being problem. Look in a textbook. Cholesterol is a molecule that only comes in one form. There isn't a good form and a bad form. So what's the difference? The difference is nothing to do with cholesterol. It's to do with the protein that is bound around the lipoprotein package that the LDL is transported around your body in. So the thing that's being oxidized or glycated is not even the cholesterol. It's the protein that carries it, the ApoB100 protein. So the way to avoid heart disease is to avoid chronic systemic inflammation. And the way to avoid chronic systemic inflammation is not to eat plants. Simple. Eat meat and salt, shake, relax, and repeat. Basically.
All right. So let me ask, this is from Carl. It says, in your research, what have you found to be the top 5 jobs of insulin in priority order? So what is insulin doing? What's its physiologic role? And I guess most important, going down the scale if you can.
Right. So first, foremost, and almost the only one that's really very important is the role of activating the GLUT4 transporter, setting it to the open configuration, allowing sugar, for example, to enter the cell, glucose to enter a cell. The second role is around the absorption of protein. And then there are third, fourth, and fifth roles around second messenger hormone-like activities, I think, from there. Have I missed anything, Sean, on that list that would be really important, do you think? Or
I don't Not necessarily. I think, you talked about it, lipoprotein lipase, I think, maybe, I don't know, hormone sensitive lipase, obviously.
Yeah. So there's an activation role there in terms of the lipoprotein lipase thing as well, yes. But I mean, primarily, when you're focusing on insulin, I mean, really, for me, the top two are the ones that you really need to worry about, and they are the roles that they play around the metabolism of carbohydrates and proteins, getting them out of the bloodstream and into the cell.
I know there's a lot of recent interest in glucagon.
Yeah.
Can you comment on glucagon? I mean,
Yeah.
on
Yes.
insulin?
So glucagon is basically anti-insulin for those that want to think about, what role does it do? It's antagonistic to insulin. It tends to set the body into a catabolic state, really, where insulin is an anabolic agent, and glucagon is a catabolic agent, which works directly opposed to that. It causes the liver to dump glucose quickly into the bloodstream, for example, that kind of thing. And it's one of those balance things where you've got a tipping balance between one thing and another thing. So that's really its role, is anti-insulin. Would be the most simple way I could probably explain it without getting into the heavy biochemistry and stuff.
I know there's got Ben Bickman. I don't know if you're familiar with Ben Bickman.
A little bit, yeah.
He talks about the role of, glucagon and insulin relative to relative to protein and low carb situations. There's a little bit of a differential, utilization, expression of those hormones.
Yeah. So your body does adjust when you change your nutritional profile, and obviously all the adjustments that are occurring are all holistic, and they're all around re-gearing your metabolism to do what it's actually designed to do, and that's to run on fat, basically, as a fuel source, with protein being used as the building blocks. So I always think it's interesting when people talk about the energy content of protein, because unless you're overeating protein, most of the protein that you consume is not oxidized for energy. So it's an interesting one. Most of it is used for rebuilding tissues and synthesizing new enzymes and growing hair for those that can still do that kind of stuff.
Because there's obviously the calorie sort of folks that talk about calorie balance, but then they always sort of put the caveat there when protein is controlled, but protein is still, like I said, it does have a caloric, profile. So when people are eating a meat-based diet, obviously the protein consumption generally goes up, and we find that protein is very difficult to convert into body fat. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that quite so. I mean, your body is designed to do one of two things with protein, and that is use it for building tissues, building enzymes, etc., or deaminate it and oxidize that for energy if there's too much protein floating around. And again, with the caveat that actually, if you've got a bunch of protein and a bunch of fat floating around, the fat's going to get used first, and the protein will be held back until there's a point where we need some energy. We don't have any fat or carbohydrate, so now we have to use this protein. And so protein is always used for energy last for that reason. That makes perfect sense when you think about it, really. Does that answer the question, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Leah's just asking us can you describe your current diet, and do you think that plants are toxic? Is a high plant diet keto with a lot of salad healthy for anyone?
Okay, right. So my diet is on one of those 95 out of 100 days where I'm compliant completely. Typically, I'll eat once a day. Typically that'll be around about 3-4 in the afternoon. And it will be, in my case, something like around about 400 grams of muscle meat, usually beef. Sometimes it'll be pork ribs occasionally. Sometimes it'll be lamb. Sometimes chicken or fish, even less often than that. Mostly it's beef, muscle meat. I don't chase organs. I don't look for eating organs. I don't think that it's particularly necessary. Certainly for me, it definitely isn't necessary to go and chase a bunch of liver or anything like that. But that's it. 400 grams of meat and the associated fat that comes with that. Sometimes some additional fat in the form of butter or lard or whatever it was that was used to cook the steak. That's it. That's the caloric intake for the day. Now, don't forget that that's on the basis that I'm 5'6" and 145 pounds. Not particularly active these days. I do go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and lift for half an hour, 45 minutes at a time. Twice a week or so, we tend to get out on the sea kayak and do a day's paddling around and avoiding 5-foot sharks breaching 20 feet in front of the boat yesterday or the day before yesterday. Jeez, I was like, okay, shits. That's it. I mean, that's typically the intake. What was the second part of the question about?
Oh, do you feel that plants, even in the context of a ketogenic plant-based diet, could be healthy?
All right. Yep. Plants are toxic. There's no two ways about it. Plants contain toxins. Plants are genetically designed for their own ends, not for yours. They don't exist to feed you. The nutrients that plants contain are there for the needs of that plant. They're not there for your needs. You can't get most of them anyway. The only difference between one person and the next is your individual tolerance, your ability to get away with it. That is largely determined by where your genes come from most recently in terms of the last 4 or 5 generations. The closer those genes are to having come from an equatorial zone, the more you are likely to be able to cope with more plant material and carbohydrate material in your diet. The further away from the equator those genes come from, the less likely you are to be able to cope with that, which obviously makes sense when you think about the way our planet has been for the last 350,000 years, just never mind the last 10,000 or so. So it's been the last 10,000 years where our climate has become stable and relatively warm. The ice age has receded and remained away for about 10,000 years, that we have got together and built the societies that we have and built the cities that we have and gone through the agricultural revolution and all of that stuff. That's what's absolutely destroyed our health, just in that very last bit of our 350,000 year existence as a species, give or take. And then you look at the N15 isotope testing that's been done on human remains throughout that period, throughout that 350,000 years. And the answer comes back very, very clear, that it looks like we've been consuming the flesh of animals almost exclusively for 350,000 years. So this is absolutely a fad diet, Sean, that's just got started here. My God. Yeah, so that's kind of where it is for me. Yes, are plants toxic? Yes, they are. Are all of them toxic? Yes, they all are. The only difference is the degree of toxicity between different plants and the degree of variability between individuals in terms of their particular ability to cope with those toxins. I'm kind of blessed, I guess, with the ability to not cope with plants at all, which should probably be the thing that should get me to 100% compliance. But I guess the reasons that I haven't got to 100% are around my pathological demand avoidance syndrome presentation, where, you know, anything that's imposed upon me, I will rail against. So, no, I'm going to have some plants if I want to. And then for the next 48 hours, I'm going to go, why the hell did you do that? Because that wasn't even, you didn't even enjoy it. It wasn't even that much fun. It was, think about these foods that people crave. And so I've got to have this. The moment you swallow it, that's done. We're finished with that enjoyment now. That's it. That's all you get. And the price for me is 48 hours of hell. So that'll be the thing that'll get me there eventually, I would say. Other people, like I know Brett tells me he finds it easy. He's absolutely compliant. He tells me that he hasn't transgressed not even once for, 600 days or something now. So, you know, that's impressive. You know, I wish I had that level of discipline myself, and I'll get there one day. Yeah. So, yep, plants, not good.
All right. So another question is from Carl. It says, do you have an approach for food addiction? And what are your thoughts with food addictions?
Yeah, it's my approach to people that present with food addictions is I refer them to my my local resident expert in the area, and her name is Pim Johnson, Jannsson. That's absolutely her area. For those that don't know, Pim is my partner, and she has her own channel. And that's her thing. She's all about food addiction, dopamine reaction addiction, all that kind of stuff. That's her absolute area. And she has as many degrees as I do. So yeah, I usually say to people, you know, she's the one to listen to on that. And she has a number of techniques that she goes through with people to break those kind of addictions and sort those kind of things out for people. So I would generally suggest to people that they talk to her about that.
All right. There's a question. I don't know. Diane Licata is asking about proteins held back where. I guess that was our I guess I can't remember where that comes from, but I don't know where protein is held back. I'm not sure what that's about. Let's go to the next one. It says thoughts on nutritional difference between grocery store meat and organic grass-fed meats. Anyway, thoughts on any major issues between eating one versus the other?
I always say to people that if you can get it and if you can afford it, grass-fed any day of the week for preference. And the reason I say that is because of the omega-3, 6, 9 ratio issue. If, however, it's not that available or you struggle to afford it, then grain-fed beef is still preferable to eating any kind of plant material. Absolutely. And apparently that makes me a carnivore to say that. But there you go. Yeah, it's... I mean, we're blessed here in New Zealand. I mean, you can't really get anything but grass-fed, grass-finished beef. That's all we do here. We are at a latitude whereby we don't have to put animals inside any time of the year. We don't use feedlot. We don't need to finish them off with grains or anything. Grass-fed is the go. It's the norm. So that's great. But I realize that in other parts of the world, that's not the case. So yeah, that's what I always say to people. Absolutely, grass-fed is better. I'm not saying it isn't, but grain-finished or grain-fed beef is still better than eating the grains yourself. I think the protein question about held back, Sean, I think that refers to what I was saying about how protein is going to be used last for energy. And I think the question there is around, well, where is it stored? Oh, well, it's stored in your amino acid pools, which are largely in your blood and in your cytosolic fluids, and also your some of your interstitial fluids is where those amino acids reside. And your body senses the level of those through various sensors and controls that for you there. I think that's what the question was about.
Okay, yeah, I think it probably was.
Yeah.
Scott's putting a plug in for your Patreon channel, and then also good videos explaining things like the Randall cycle. Can you go through that real quick? The Randall cycle for people that may not be familiar?
Yep. Look, the simplest way to explain the Randall cycle to people is this: if you consume the exact number of calories in effect that you are actually using on a day-by-day basis in effect, then the makeup of those calories in terms of the macronutrient profile is not important with respect to the Randall cycle. It's fine. The Randall cycle only kicks in and becomes a problem for people if your effective caloric intake exceeds your actual expenditure. In other words, you have some energy overplus in the form of energy substrates in your blood. What happens then is if you have a mixture of carbohydrates and fats together, which is reasonably even, the carbohydrates and fats will basically cross-compete with each other and lock each other out of exiting the blood and entering the cells. So those cells become locked, if you like. And the reason the cells are locked is because the cells are completely replete with a store of energy, which will be in the form of some carbohydrate and some lipid within the cell. And so, of course, the cell needs no further energy, so it doesn't need to import anything from the blood. And in fact, if it was going to import more sugar from the blood, that would be toxic to the cell and cause glycation and oxidation issues and all that kind of stuff. So your cell avoids that by simply closing that door. No thanks, don't need any more energy. What happens then is that because you've got these substrates in your blood, they will go to the liver, and the liver will say, okay, this level is not dropping, this is not needed, so I'm going to change this into triglyceride, and the sugar that is, and we'll store that as such. Now you say, well, that makes sense. That's perfectly fine, isn't it? Until you realize that the thing that determines fat storage is actually acute inflammation. That's the switch that turns your metabolism from catabolic to anabolic. Fat usage versus fat storage. So an acute bout of eating, which would replete you with energy more than what your cells need, your cells obviously react sensibly. They lock themselves out. We don't need any more energy right now. The liver senses that and starts storing it. But to do that, acute inflammation must occur. And that's not a problem if you do it once. But if you do it 3, 4, 5 times a day, every day of the week, now you've got chronic systemic inflammation because your nutritional profile is causing that inflammation to occur. Chronic systemic inflammation is the root cause of cardiovascular disease, many cancers, type 2 diabetes, etc., etc. All the big killers. They are all at their root cause inflammatory disorders. How does that work? When the cell is locked out for getting more energy in, as the energy level that's stored in that cell starts to drop, the cell will start to reopen, but there's a lag time, and that lag time is when the inflammation occurs. Why does that occur? It occurs because the redox state in those cells starts to drop, the NAD plus to NADH ratio changes. That reduces the ability to resynthesize ATP from ADP plus PI. PI is inorganic phosphate. Inorganic phosphate that builds up in a cell binds to the pro-inflammatory cytokines. That's the switch that turns the inflammation on. It's phosphate. That's why you get inflamed acutely. And it's that acute inflammation. It's a phosphorylation, actually, of the GLUT4 transporter that locks it out. So that's why I'm saying acute inflammation is the switch that means you're going to store fat. And it also means you are inflamed, which invites heart disease, diabetes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we need to avoid a diet which has a mixed macro profile in terms of fats and carbohydrates. So protein and fat together, fine. Carbohydrates and protein together, fine. And funnily enough, that's what you find in natural foods, isn't it? When you think about all the naturally available foods, animal products are high in protein and fat and very, very low in carbohydrate. Plant materials are very, very high in carbohydrate and fiber, very, very low in fat relatively, especially saturated, obviously, and a bit of protein involved. So eating one of those ways will alleviate the Randall cycle issue. That's why people who go on a vegan diet for the first 3 to 5 years will talk about all the health benefits of it. It's because they've alleviated the Randall cycle issue. They've dealt with their chronic systemic inflammation, and that's where all these things come from. What the vegans don't tell you, however, is that by the time you get to about 5 years, that's when the nutritional deficiencies in that diet start to kick in. Obviously, it varies from person to person, depending on genetics and whatever else. But the numbers are clear. 84% of people who ever go vegan quit within 5 years, and 90% of those people cite catastrophic health failure as the reason. And that's not what's being reported over here in the carnivore circles, is it? So you need to avoid the Randall cycle issue, absolutely. So the way to do that is have a high protein, high fat diet, or have a high carbohydrate diet. So to make that decision, then you just need to go, well, which one of those diets is demonstrably a problem, demonstrably deficient? Which one of those diets is destroying people's lives and health? It's the vegan diet that's doing that. The carnivorous diet is healing people left, right, and center. It's not rocket science to you don't need any science. You just need to use your senses and go, what's happening? So either we're all lying over here in the carnivore community and we're suppressing any reports of negative outcomes, or we've got the answer and somebody and the other crowd haven't got the answer. So that's the Randall cycle in a nutshell.
Well, that's a good way to sum things up, Bart. We are at an hour. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for getting up at 5 a.m. in New Zealand.
Absolute pleasure.
Talk to you. I look forward to seeing you more.
Cool.
Hopefully down the road. Keep doing what you're doing, and I know we all appreciate everybody that's fighting the good fight out here. So,
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. I know the time zone kind of messed some people up today, unfortunately, but we'll get this. This will be recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube channel.
Cool.
And so other people will be able to view it. Thanks again, Bart.
All right. And yeah, please, people, do feel free to drop me a note. Do feel free to drop into my channel, communicate, ask questions over there as well. It's all good stuff.
And where do they find you, just so they know, just in case they're not familiar?
Yep. Okay. So Bart Kay, Nutrition Science Watchdog. Listen, if you just put Bart Kay into any Google search window, I'll be the first 100 listings that come up. You cannot not find me if you want to. It's easy. Yep. So just search for me by name. There's a YouTube channel. There's a Facebook page. There's a Discord server. There's all sorts going on there. Get involved. Make yourself known. The more of us that are connected up behind the scenes, the better in my mind. The more stories we hear, the better. Anecdotes, though. Anecdotes. Just anecdotes. That's all we've got. Anecdotes, And so that's basically where it's at.
Perfect. All right, guys, I'm going to shut down. You guys have a great Sunday, and
right.
I'll see some of you guys Monday. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks very much, Sean.
Okay. Bye-bye, Bart. Take care.
That's it.
Bye-bye, guys.